Welcome to the Be Ruthless Show, where we have the conversations that other people don't, the conversations that other people won't. I'm your host, Sam Ruth, and I'm ready to make a lot of noise and disrupt things, ruthlessly. Thanks for being here today. Now let's get to it. Welcome back to the Be Ruthless Show. I'm your host, Sam Ruth, and joining me today is Charlie Beswick, a mom to 16-year-old twins, Oliver and Harry. She's the author of best-selling book, Our Altered Life, a brutally honest account of how she came to terms with a life she never expected. She's also an award-winning blogger, and her family story has featured internationally on Sky TV and in national press. She's the founder of More Than a Face charity and has spoken with over 6,000 students to educate them on visible differences, including behaviors typically associated with autism. She is also a teacher with over 16 years experience in both primary and secondary schools. Thank you so much for being here and having this much needed conversation.
Hi, Sam. Thank you very much for having me.
Twins is everybody's dream, but it's overwhelming by itself.
Completely. Going from a couple to a ready-made family of 4 is wow, a lot.
How old were they when you started noticing things? Tell everyone listening what to listen and look for.
Okay, so my boys were born 8 weeks prematurely, so they were born at 32 weeks, and they were whisked away to what you guys call NICU. So I was special care, and about 4 hours later, we were told about Harry's facial disfigurement. So he was born with that. So for him, he's got a syndrome called golden heart syndrome. So he was born with no eye socket, no ear, no nostril, short underdeveloped jaw. The doctor said that he may never walk and he would probably have brain damage. So I went from quite the perfectionist / bit of a smug mom. I was like, here I am, super uterus, cooking these 2 little people. To being completely blindsided and just full of guilt because I thought it must have been something I did, and grief for the life we would never know and experience together. So the early days were horrendous. I am not wrapping that up. It was awful. And as much as I absolutely adore my boys now, and they are just the center of my universe, and I wouldn't change them, it wasn't a journey I would have ever chosen to go on. Harry was diagnosed with autism quite early. Actually, he was about 3, just turned 3 when he was diagnosed. And it was very, very obvious that he wasn't interacting socially with any other children. There was a lot of rocking and behaviors that we call stimming, which is like self-regulatory behaviors. So things like lots of flapping, lots of tapping himself on the chest, lots of this sort of rocking backwards and forwards. He had certain obsessions with particular toys, and lining toys up is often a very common trait. So there were lots of sort of indicators really that he was going to be diagnosed with autism. And yeah, it wasn't a surprise when he was diagnosed, but it was something else to get our heads round. The boys were... Go on, sorry.
Okay. No, I was just thinking, you said you had grief because you lost the life you wouldn't have. I'm just curious how much support there is at the initial stages.
Nothing. So this was 17, boys are actually 17 now. I should have updated my bio for you. It was 17 years ago, and I've recently set up a community to support mums because things haven't changed. Things haven't moved on. Parents are given a leaflet. This is your child's diagnosis. Off you go. Good luck. There's nobody to sit there with you in those first really, really sometimes very dark days when you are blaming yourself and you are full of questions with no answers. And you're just questioning whether you are the right mother for this baby. I was like, can I do this? Am I the right mother for this baby? I don't know that I'm strong enough. And all my family and friends were sort of saying, of course you are. If anybody can do this, it's you. And that was beautiful. That came from such a genuine place of believing in me. But what it did, it created a bar for me to live up to. So when I was having my bad days, when I was filled with doubt, I didn't feel like I could share that because I didn't want to let people down more than I already thought I had. So I think maternal mental well-being around diagnosis is massively under-resourced and under-supported.
In the US, it's also very handed off. And in all of my experience and everything I have lived in school and in my career, the most I learned was from the moms and all the work they were doing on their own and advocating for themselves and their children. And it's amazing. And you're all super women, but it shouldn't be that way.
No, it really shouldn't. And it is a fight and it is a battle. And if you are the sort of parent that is happy to tackle education and healthcare head on, then your children will be okay, they'll thrive. And if you're the kind of parent that really struggles to advocate for yourself, for your child, then those are the families that slip through the loop. Those are the families, and that it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be over here. It's a postcode lottery, depending on like zip code areas where you live. You know, it shouldn't be about how much money you've got, how much confidence you've got, which area you live in. It should be about the fact that you've got a child with additional needs and you both need support. And it makes me very sad and cross that that isn't available.
What about as he got older in the schools? How much support is there? Or again, is it you letting the school know your needs?
Yeah, so with Harry's needs, it was very, very apparent early doors that he wasn't going to cope in a mainstream setting. So he's always been in a special needs school, a special provision. And I'm quite lucky in that respect because his needs are so severe that the local authority just couldn't fight with me. It was just very obvious. Where people in the UK struggle is where their child is contained in a mainstream school, but they're not supported and they're not thriving. So then they have to fight to prove that they want extra funding for either additional staff to come in and support them in a mainstream setting, or that they deserve a place in a special needs school. And again, that comes down to the parents' confidence. It comes down to if parents can afford a decent lawyer. And so the odds aren't very fair at all in that situation. So somebody like my son, Oliver, Harry's twin, who's coped absolutely fine through mainstream, but as he's got older, we've realised he is also on the spectrum. He's the sort of child that very easily slips through the net. All parents have to fight really, really hard for.
There are many people who don't even discover this diagnosis until later in life because they can adapt and function in the mainstream. What can teachers and professionals, especially, I don't know what support you have as far as a psychologist or that in the school, there's not enough here, but there should be more. And that's what I'm doing, trying to let people know, have us there. You need us, even though you don't think you need us.
100%.
What should we be looking for those that might not know? And certainly it's not his responsibility to speak up.
No, absolutely not. I think for me, and I've been a teacher, as you said in the intro, for 16 years now, you just need to know your kids, know your class. They are not there as objects for you to move sub-levels of progress up. You know, that's the byproduct. As a teacher, it's our responsibility to, yes, teach and impart information, but also to get to know these little people and to grow them and to give them a sense of self-worth and value. And you can't do that if you're treating all children the same. And so it's for me, I'm passionate about get to know the students, get to know the children. My children now that walk into the classroom, I can tell from a look on their face if they need regulation time, if they're about to sort of kick off and have an argument or a fight, because I know I take the time to get to know those children and really understand what works for them and work with parents. Parents are used to fighting all of the time. And what teachers don't always realise is that the parents that come across sometimes a bit passive aggressive or are a pain in the neck, or are those parents that are like a dog with a bone that won't let it go, these parents are fighting for a new life than the one they imagined. You know, they're fighting to create as many opportunities for their children as possible. So as a teacher, I always try to work with the parents as best and as much as I can. So they would be my 2 bits of advice for professionals, is really get to know the children as individuals and work with the parents.
And if that's not happening, if I would love to believe there are more teachers like you than not, but I hear too many stories about not being heard and not recognizing anxiety and not listening without proof. So students in a panic attack have to wait 3 weeks for a doctor's note.
Yeah.
What do you suggest to those parents? Who's the next person to go to if you're not getting that support from the teacher?
Okay, so in the UK, I'm not sure what the US system is, so you'll have to maybe just sort of translate this to the equivalent, I guess. We have a board of governors that look after the school. So I guess the head teacher would be the first port of call. The downside of that is it can then spiral into an official complaint, if you like, which then damages relationships further. But if your child is not getting what they need, then sometimes relationships have to be poked and prodded a little bit. So a head teacher, board of governors, local authority, and any external agencies that might be there to support parents. But it is a minefield. It's very, very exhausting and frustrating and sad. And to me, you know, if you're not there for the children, why are you a teacher? Because it's certainly not for the salary. And yeah, okay, it might be that you get term time employment and holidays, but yeah, if you're not there to support and raise good children, then I would question why you're in the profession.
And that's where people, advocates come in. Yeah. And you said early on, immediately you had guilt, there was a mental health area, but I don't know that moms and parents recognize the significance of making time for you you're so busy taking care of the kids that it might be on the back burner. And I want others to know that enlisting that support doesn't have to mean time away from your kids. That can mean handing off these tasks that you're not getting anywhere with to someone who will take on that fight with you and take away some of that pressure. And so I don't think enough people reach out for that third person.
No, they don't. I think they see it as a failing. They see that they are failing if they can't do everything. And that's absolutely not the case. I'm actually running a self-care webinar at the end of this month, next week, in fact. And I was doing some research for that today. And the self-care movement, although it was started in a medical setting in the 1950s, the 1960s, there was an activist group called the Black Panther Group in the US, and they were campaigning for equal rights for Black and LGBT, as it would have been at the time. And they realized that to actually make the change that they wanted to do systemically on a big scale and to sustain that, they were all burning out because it was such a passion project of theirs. And they were like, we've got to look after ourselves. We've got to take care so that we've got the energy to fight. And I thought, wow, that is such a powerful route of self-care, because that's the same as us now as mums of children with additional needs. We have to fight. We can't fight on our own, so we have to enlist people with us, and we have to be strong enough to do that. So we have to take care of ourselves however we can. And
that applies to no matter what topic we're covering. Sure. Right? We happen to be talking about autism, but that we live in a world that somehow treats reaching out for support as a weakness, and it is the opposite. It's a strength.
Yes.
And millions of people are suffering because they're adhering to this unhealthy standard. So to anyone listening, we're a team. We can fight together. There's power in numbers, and doing it alone, it just makes it more intense. It takes longer, and you do not really understand how many other people are dealing with the same thing. Sure. Until you start trusting and letting someone into that conversation.
I had a conversation a couple of years ago now with Harry's school about respite care, about him going to short stays or even just day breaks with other children and other people. And because he's very limited verbally, it's something that I've resisted for years and years. And I remember the assistant head teacher saying to me, if he was a typical 14-year-old boy, at this age, he would be having sleepovers at his friend's house. He would be meeting different boys and different groups and having different interests. And in some ways, you not allowing him to go to respite is doing him a disservice, is holding him back from those experiences. And I had never thought of it in that way. She said it with love. It wasn't, meant to be a criticism. And I think about that now a lot. So for any of your listeners out there that are struggling with offloading, I would say, do you know what, if there are experts that do this as a living, they are better placed to support your child than you are. So it's not a failing. If anything, it's you stepping up and saying, right, this isn't my strength, this isn't my zone of genius, I'm going to give that to you so my child got the best chance with you in their corner. And this isn't what I'm great at, but you guys, you know your stuff. You can help me fight for my child. And actually what I'm good at is loving my child, is knowing them inside out, is explaining what they need to the people that can fight with me. And that's what our children need. They need happy, healthy mums and dads, you know, that have got that army with them and don't try and do it all on their own.
And in doing that, you give yourself the gift of that time to breathe for whatever, take a nap, do the laundry, see a friend, some sort of outlet.
Yes.
Which is important for anyone at any age. So I love that you shared that. How do people find your community? How do people connect with you? It's difficult to make that first step.
Sure, absolutely. So on Instagram, we are Our Altered Life, and on Facebook as well. So that's my social handle everywhere. And my book is Our Altered Life, if anybody wanted to check that out. My group is, so in the UK, SEND stands for Special Educational Needs and Disability. So my group is called Send, Gin and Cheese, because they are two of my favourite things. And I didn't want a support group that was very much send help and support, send advice and, you know, IEP sort of education support, because it does make you feel like you're failing to join in with a community that it kind of made me feel a bit icky. So I've called it Send Gin and Cheese. Parents come into the group and they introduce themselves if they want to, with their favourite beverage and snack as well. So it's about celebrating the women we are and not just the mums. It's about remembering that we are women. And in the group, people can post anonymously if they don't want to sort of, you know, publicly share their thoughts. And we have a few of those, but by and large, it's a super, super safe, beautiful community with women that really, truly get what it's like to live an altered life, and understand the wins that, you know, other mums will take for granted, as well as the challenges.
I love that. And I also want to point out, you can join the group and just observe. You don't have to even share anonymously, right? You can just be there and be in a community until you feel comfortable. Somebody else's story, some comment will connect, it will resonate with you at some point in time. And that will be when you can, I just want people to know that you can just be a silent observer as well.
Oh, just stay in the room. Just, you know, come into the group and stay in the room. Check it. I don't want it to be a group that's just a pain for people to kind of, you know, or a burden. I want it to be somewhere that they come and get empowerment, enlightenment, a little bit of support and a giggle. You know, we laugh a lot in there as well as stamp our feet and have a tantrum and cry. And it's a beautiful community. So 100% people are very welcome to participate at whatever level they are comfortable with.
And let's talk about an altered life. Tell me more about the book. Where can people find it? What can they expect to learn?
Ooh, okay. So it's brutal. I am very, very honest. I didn't plan to publish the book. It took me 9 years to write, because originally it was a cathartic exercise where I just collected loads of diary entries, I used school reports, medical reports, Harry's healthcare book, Facebook statuses. I just wrote it all down over a number of years as something for me, as a memoir for me. And then I gave it to my sister and one of my friends, and they just said this would help so many people. And I was like, really? And they said, you really need to publish this. So I did. But because it wasn't ever written with the audience in mind, it's not filtered. It's very much like my diary entries. So I will say, I didn't want a disabled baby. That wasn't in the plan for me. I didn't want to be a disabled baby's mum. I wanted to be a normal mum like everybody else. And I felt bitter and angry and lost and confused and frustrated. And that maternal swell of protectiveness and love did not come instantly for me. It took some time because I was grieving and because I felt so guilty. And there's funny things. So everybody that reads it says they laugh out loud and they cry. So I would just say buy tissues. If you're going to buy the book, I deliberately wrote it in very short chapters. My editor put it into about 5 chapters. And I went back to her and I said, I read books in little chapters. If I'm in bed, I need to know that I might just read one more chapter. It's only 4 pages long. And so because of that reason, people say, oh, I've read it in 2 days. It was amazing. So yeah, it's available on Amazon to buy as Kindle and paperback.
So it is personal, real. It's not homework. It's not.
No,
this is just your story.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mentor mums. So if people want the homework and the growth work, I can do that. But the book is my journey, my story, and just my way of as you said earlier, letting other mums know they're not on their own. It's not just them. Lots of the feedback is you've written what I daren't say out loud.
And that's I'm so glad and grateful that you didn't edit it. There are people who we say there are things I tell certain people and I'm like, I said this, I thought this. I don't necessarily want the world to know, but going through something, that's how it, and other people then need to know, okay, I'm not crazy for having this thought.
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes people call me out on my use of the word grief, because they say your child's still alive, you shouldn't be grieving them. And I'm like, okay, that's your opinion and you are absolutely welcome to that. But you can grieve a life you didn't have and still love the one you've got. You can miss the child and the opportunities and experiences that they will never know and still cherish the experiences and opportunities that your child has now. Those 2 things are not mutually exclusive. And it doesn't make you a bad mom, it makes you human.
And I agree with you completely. My group is Grief Hab. That's my community. And it's for anyone who's experienced a loss. And there are people who have lost the life they thought they would have. And this happens with athletes and injuries as well. And we live in a world that minimizes it. And I think grieving it and acknowledging it is part of healing. And so everyone who is resisting that is stuck.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree with that.
What else do you want people listening to know? This is, again, not talked about enough, walked away from, minimized, unless you are fighting for it. And it's, whether it's in your personal life, at your work, through a friend, you will encounter someone with autism in your life, no matter where you are.
Sure. I would say as parent carers, advice would be, don't believe everything you think. Because we beat ourselves up terribly. We tell ourselves we're not good enough. We tell ourselves we're failing them. And it's BS. It's not true. We're working hard. We're working our best. We're doing our best. I would also say to take one day at a time. And I think, it is important to see the end goal, whether that's, an operation in Harry's case initially, whether that's therapy, whether that's healthcare inclusion. But all those big journeys start with a little step. And so focus on those little steps and you'll get there. And for people who are supporting others with children who have, or adults who have autism, just see them for the individuals that they are, that can add a wealth of information and richness to your lives. The amount of mums that I mentor whose children never get invited to a party. They just drop off the social circuit because they seem to be a bit weird, or, well, we thought your child would get a bit stressed, or we thought your child might be overwhelmed. Well, thank you very much, but give me the option. He's my child, or she's my child. Let me choose, but give me a place at the table. And I think, don't make your mind up for these people that you think you know everything about them because they're autistic. If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Yes, there are common traits, but you could say that about everything. People are unique, and I would just say to see them and to value them equally.
That's beautiful. And I feel like that needs to be said for the parents as well. Sure. Are you invited to less things? Does your social circle change?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You definitely lose friends along the way. And, while my boys have been young, I've gone out with a circle of friends and they can sit and have a coffee while the children are playing. I can't. I'm running around. Even now when he's 17, I can't sit and chat with my friends. he's running off, opening fire exits, stealing children's toys, eating people's food. It's relentless for parents like us. And so sometimes you need to take the party to the parents, so the friends that know and love me the best are the ones that will say, oh, can we have a catch up? And I'll say, well, I've got Harry, I can't. No worries, we'll come to you. So
the exact same things dealing with grief. It's so true. The people who know us best will meet us where we need to be, not where we used to be.
Sure.
How is Oliver? What is he out socializing, and what's it like if you were out with him having?
Yeah, Oliver is incredibly articulate and very emotionally intelligent. He definitely displays symptoms of autism. He still tiptoe walks at 17. And he has obsessive thoughts. He's taught himself Japanese. His current obsession for the last 3 years has been Japan. So he's fluent in Japanese just from YouTube and books. He has huge anxiety around change. Social situations exhaust him. So although he's chatty, I think a lot of that is masking, and we could talk all day about masking, but he's got a super sociable mum in me and his dad. We're no longer together, I've remarried, but we get on very, very well. We're super similar. So his dad equally is a very sociable, very gregarious person. And I think Oliver has learned from watching us too. This is what you do in social situations. You shake hands, you call men sir, you treat women with respect. Beautiful qualities that everybody comments on, but it takes its toll on him. So if we've been out socially, he will need to come home and have a bath. That's his way of decompressing and just sort of grounding himself again. He can be exhausted by any long social activities.
That's amazing that he can take a bit. Did he figure that out, or did you recognize that was soothing for him?
Yeah, it was something that we discussed together. He kind of just said, I need that downtime. And I said, no, I completely agree. And I knew, but I wanted him to discover it himself. I'm not a fan of labeling people for the sake of it, because I think people can live into a label. And so I just wanted him to realize that. So I'd do I'm a teacher, you can't my poor boys have got a teacher for a mother that's always using these little sort of strategies. And so it was something that we both discovered together, I would say. But because we've done that, and me not saying, well, I think you're autistic and you need a bath to decompress, he's not living my reality. That's my version. He's living his reality. And so now he will say, I just need some time on my own. Is that okay? I'm like, absolutely. You go for what you need. You do what you need.
And all children, young adults need to know that.
Sure.
I mean, any social situations can be exhausting to anyone, and having that ability to say, I need some time versus being overstimulated or acting out, or, that's a great skill. And I want everyone listening to know that these are conversations we can all have with our children, young adults in our lives, because adults don't even do that enough.
No, they don't. And I think, what I say to Oliver is to give the best of yourself. You don't have to give all of yourself. Don't try and make everybody else happy, because the people that love you the most will respect your decisions, will respect what you choose. And so if that means that you need to go and have a bath and you miss a night out for whatever reason, that's okay. And as you say, it's just about giving them permission to know what they need and to actually do that, because, you're spot on. Lots of adults don't.
Yeah, these are great tools. I will put the link to the book, the link to Send Gin and Cheese, which I now love. How can people get in touch with you? Anything else they should know? If you're driving, it'll be in the show notes, but where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so online or info@Charlie Beswick. They can drop me an email there. My website is currently being redesigned, but my website is charliebeswick.com, and there'll be information about my mentoring and the service that I offer to individuals and to organisations as well, because I work with companies to support parent carers in the workplace as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time and your story. This is so needed, and I wish we could talk all day. I really do.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much.
To everyone listening, connect with Charlie, and Look for that information in the show notes. My favorite is Send Gin and Cheese if you need a community for support, but also website, Instagram, all of that information. Until next time, everyone, always be ruthless. Thanks so much for listening today. Your support means everything to me, truly. If this podcast resonates with you, please do me a favor and join in the Ruthless movement by making some noise and doing one of these 4 things. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Tell a friend so we can break stigmas even faster. Leave a review so people can see what you think of the show. And last, if you want to learn more about me and be a part of the Grief Hab community, please head on over to the Facebook group. We'd love to have you. Thanks again for spending your time with us, and see you next week.